Good evening and welcome to today's Tropics for September 11th, 2021. Please note I'm not a meteorologist and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storms I'm talking about, and for any decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or local officials. First off, I apologize for the lateness of this video. I finally found a quiet spot where I can record, but yeah, unfortunately it's a little late. It's quarter to 10 Eastern time here, but anyway, uh, today I'm looking at Invest 94L, which is currently in the southern Gulf of Mexico. Also a sort of wave interacting with the in the western main development region, and Invest 93L, which is currently pretty much over the Cabo Verde Islands. So let's first take a look at Invest 94L. It's not too healthy. You can see kind of a decent mid-level spin here from that convection during the day today, but the problem is it's really faded away. There's not really a whole lot during or near the actual center. There's some convection, kind of almost like a band of it further to the east, but it's not quite over this center. It's still likely that it will form. It's got a 90% chance from the National Hurricane Center. But it doesn't seem right now that that is imminent because we're not seeing that convection over the center. Perhaps by this tomorrow morning, when there's a diurnal maximum, we might see some convection reform and maybe another attempt to develop. But so far, it doesn't look like in the imminent future we're going to see tropical cyclogenesis. Looking at the water vapor loop, there's a lot of southwesterly wind aloft just to the north of the storm, and that would be shearing it if it were up here right now. A pretty decent spot here, and that's it. Actually, at the leading edge of an upper anticyclone here, you can kind of see a bit of it over here. So that's starting to push away this kind of upper troughing that's further to the west. You can see kind of more of a trough axis over Mexico here. And that is because we're in a pretty progressive upper air environment. A lot of stuff in the upper levels is moving to the west. And that's indeed what's likely going to happen to that upper ridge and that upper trough. And basically what happens is that upper ridging kind of moves into the Gulf of Mexico and sets up near Invest 94L. And Invest 94L's outflow also kind of perhaps will help with the upper level ridging kind of locking onto there. So it seems likely that Invest 94L during most of its time in the Gulf of Mexico will have a decent upper level environment, so it's not going to be sheared likely unless the northern part kind of gets squashed here like the GFS says. GFS doesn't have a whole lot of support, but it's maybe not really something you want to throw out. But in general, unless that happens, it'll have a decent time with the shear in the Gulf of Mexico, and that will allow it to strengthen a little as it heads northward towards the northwestern Gulf Coast here. One issue for it could be that sort of drier continental air that may try to wrap around from the drier parts of further western Texas here, and that might start interrupting the storm, especially if it's weak. It seems that one thing it'll do is kind of keep it a little bit east weighted. So depending on where circulation actually forms and where it starts tracking, you might see that kind of precipitation maximum maybe set up a little to the east, but we'll have to see how organized it is, because if it is maybe further east and also stronger, it won't feel as much of that continental dry air. It might be able to kind of wrap that around, but we'll see. We don't even have a closed circulation, so it's hard to tell right now. In terms of steering, there's going to be a lot of vorticity actually in the mid-levels towards or north of Invest 94L. So what that does is kind of weakens the western part of the ridge. So it's you kind of have the western part of it over here instead of kind of over the storm, and it also kind of provides an area of kind of lowering pressures or lower pressures here. That is. That might kind of attract the vortex here a bit more than north. So it does seem that it'll generally move northwards, maybe a bit west of northwards. And where it tracks is also quite important because if it can kind of track closer to the coast and makes landfall or kind of goes up the coast, it's either going to be over land or feel that dry air from the land, and it'll be weaker. But uh, there has been a trend east, and if it can keep itself a decent amount offshore, it's probably going to be able to strengthen a little more. So it seems almost certain that it's going to become a tropical cyclone. It just depends where it sets up and where it tracks. See uh, how strong it actually gets. Of course, given it's not supposed to become super strong, the main issue is that rainfall as it comes in, and indeed for that part of the northwestern Gulf Coast here, there's some high rainfall or high amounts of rainfall that is expected. Of course, we don't. This isn't too certain because we don't have a tropical cyclone yet, and so we don't know exactly where this axis of maximum precipitation is going to set up. So I'd come back later, and once we've actually got something kind of gelling up in that area, and see where it is, and perhaps where that axis of maximum rainfall is. But if you're in Texas and western Louisiana coast, or most of the Louisiana coast even, I'd keep an eye on Invest 94L, and especially the rainfall in that larger area during the early and midweek, as that is something that could cause some flooding in those flood-prone areas. So now let's look at that system in the main development region right now. It's only got a 20% chance to form, but we do see these kind of genesis modes sometimes. So it's definitely something worth taking a quick look at right now. It's currently not invest, so again, don't get too into the forecast because we don't really even have a very well organized area where something's going to try to gel up. Anyway, we have this wave here in the western main development region here, and at the same time we have the Tut cell, and you can see it's very well defined. It's a nice closed low. Again, we have a progressive upper level environment here, so you're seeing this upper level low here that's scooting off to the west-northwest pretty quickly, and you can see kind of where that flow goes, northerly over here, but kind of transitions more westerly over here. You see those diverging vectors, so you're getting upper level divergence and some deeper convection over in that area of upper level divergence, and sometimes that kind of facilitates the formation of a surface trough or surface low, and sometimes you can get tropical cyclones out of these. That's what some of the modeling is saying. One of them, the GFS, it kind of has one part of the wave actually going westward in the Caribbean, but and not really doing a whole lot. But then it has the northern part of the wave kind of not doing a whole lot until it gets further west, and then kind of amplifying under that upper level or divergence, which allows it to kind of get some of the convection and get itself going. And it could become a brief or it could become a tropical cyclone. Not sure how strong or how long-lived it would be, but it's something to watch maybe as it kind of curves up into somewhere perhaps in the east coast. Right now it only has a 20% chance, and we could see possibly nothing at all, but it is peak season. You got very warm waters here, so it's always a possibility of something forming, but definitely not something I'd worry about at this point. Let's take a look at Invest 93L. That's probably not going to do a whole lot. It's over the Cabo Verde Islands right now and causing some rainfall in the region, but it's really not going to have any major impacts outside of that for kind of two reasons. It's already over the Cabo Verde Islands, so that means in general, usually you don't have systems get to the western part of the Atlantic if it's in this area, unless they're kind of like sleeper waves that go further west. But at the same time, you can see it's not really too healthy. There's like a couple blobs of convection, but there isn't a whole lot to it, and it doesn't seem that will really change. So it's probably not going to do a whole lot. Uh, it's going to continue maybe westward and possibly bend southward, but the conditions just aren't really there. There's atmospheric forcing doesn't really support it. There's suppressed Kelvin wave over it, so it's current convection. Sea surface temperatures aren't the warmest. In fact, there's also actually an upper low or kind of almost more deep layer sort of low that's going to be setting up the kind of west southwest of Spain here near the Azores Islands, and it's going to be setting up a lot of westerly flow to the north of Invest 93L. That's what that's going to do is it's going to kind of get the northern part of the moisture envelope and kind of advect moisture away and kind of elongate that moisture bubble. So it's going to uh, not really be able to kind of gel up into something more of substance, and it's probably going to mean there's going to be more dry air getting into the area. So it's probably not going to do a whole lot. But one thing it's going to do is it's going to leave behind quite a moist air mass for this part of the Atlantic. Uh, you don't usually see air this moist in the eastern or far eastern Atlantic like this. And if you'll notice here, there's actually a wave axis modeled right here. And if you look to the northwest of the wave axis, there's that moist air. Usually, moist air to the northwest of a wave axis coming off of Africa tends to mean it's more likely to develop because you don't have as dry air that wraps into the western side. At the same time, it's also further to the south, so it's not going to have those marginal water temperatures. So the GFS model here doesn't really do a whole lot with it. Not sure I believe that because it does have decent enough conditions. It's peak season. It's coming down south of the Cabo Verde Islands, and there's in those warm waters. It's got relatively moist air, and it seems there's going to be high shear. So it seems pretty likely that we're going to see something try to get going in the eastern Atlantic, or perhaps sometime this week. Looking at the Euro ensembles here, they actually do something with it here and kind of form it pretty far east and kind of have it moving west-northwest. But of course, uh, in terms of track, it's way too early to look. This is 5 days away. This is about as far as I'd want to look, and it's still pretty far east. So we definitely want to have a better idea of. Actually, we'd want to have it off of Africa first to get a better idea, but then have something getting together and where it develops and what happens with it. That'll give us a better idea of how strong will it be, where will it track, and once it gets closer, we'll have a higher confidence forecast of the actual say stuff like ridging. So right now, not too big a threat right now. Just it's something to watch right at this point, but could be a longer tracking storm. We'll look later and see if there's any land impacts that will be coming with this. Otherwise, aside from possible subtropical cyclone, they'll be up here in the northeastern Atlantic. There isn't a whole lot else to talk about in the Atlantic at this point. If you have any questions, comments about my video, please let me know, and